Hi everyone, welcome to my garden. My name is Dale Motiska and I will be your host and garden guide through this wonderful, exciting garden tour. I call this place Shangri-La. It has its special spirit of place essence. I will be discussing plant propagation, growth rates, garden design, in this wonderful series. I hope you all enjoy. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back and relax. Some of the plants in this garden are extremely rare and endangered. I believe in propagating what I call to the new ecology. That's where we take these plants that are endangered and we propagate them and get them out. So the new ecology is that those species will survive and do well for future generations. I will be discussing arid plants, drip irrigation systems, and all the other exciting elements that are needed for your wonderful garden design. So come along with me. There's so much to talk about. I can't wait to get started. This is so exciting. Come on, let's go. Welcome back. I'm sitting here at the spa. It's the central element of the garden design. The spa is where we relax, heal, and have great conversations with our friends. This garden was inspired by another garden in Costa Rica. There's a spa called Tabacon. There's a river of hot water that comes from the volcano, and it goes into all these different pools of different temperatures that you can enjoy. My garden element starts here with a spa. It goes to the Cascades, and there's several pools that appear to go to the swimming pool, and beyond the swimming pool is the sacred lotus pond. I call that section of the garden the pool garden, and it's where we have our fun and where I exercise and relax and have a good time with my friends. Now, the other element of the garden is the spiritual element. Let me show you. Follow me around right here. This is the proverbial tube of where we've come from and where we go. At the very end is the goddess statue, Mother Birth. There's an alley of Mexican blue fans and roses. So this is the spiritual element. We can look at the physical element and the spiritual element and have the discussions right here in the spa. So there's so much more to talk about it. Let's go back down to the pool garden and start talking about all the plants. Hi everyone, we're at the pool garden now. I'd like to discuss all the different plants around this area that make it look so tropical. But first, I think we should go and take a look at all the different palms and have a brief discussion about the species. So come along with me. Our first palm is Phoenix reclinata, the Senegal date palm from Africa. The genus Phoenix are dioecious, meaning there's male plants and female plants, and they can hybridize with each other. Moving back along here, this is Phoenix laurerii. It's a variable species, multi-trunk. I like it. It's a little more semi-dwarf, I would say, than the Phoenix reclinata. Sometimes these will be single trunk, and other times multi-trunk. It's variable in that it's dioecious, so it could be hybridized with some other plants, Phoenix. In this section of the pool garden, I have approximately 15 different species of the genus Brahea. Brahea is from Mexico and Central America. Some of the Braheas are miniature, some are semi-dwarf, and some get extremely tall. This section is also what I call the Mexican section. There's cycads from Mexico and plants from Mexico that dominate this area. So let's talk about each little Brahea species. Here we have Brahea elegans. It is a true dwarf Brahea palm. It grows in Sonora in northern Mexico in dry seasonal creek beds. Very miniature, super hardy, will take temperatures down into the middle teens Fahrenheit. Here's another Brahea elegans. This one is perhaps 50 years old, but super tough. And behind that Brahea is one that I've collected in northern Mexico by a little town called Nursery. And I call this variety Brahea Nursery. Now, Brahea Nursery is probably a form of Brahea aculeata, which is another Brahea that is semi-dwarf. Braheas can usually be green, but sometimes they will have blue leaves, like this one right here. This is the Mexican blue fan palm, Brahea armata. Once again, super hardy, take temperatures down into the mid-teens Fahrenheit. So come along, I'll show you a few more Braheas. This is Brahea edulis, the Guadalupe fan palm. Very easy to grow. Its habitat is off the coast of San Diego on the Guadalupe Island. It is what I would call a semi-dwarf, although it can get 20 to 30 feet tall in perhaps 100 years. This specimen is probably about 60 years old. Guadalupe fan palm. Wonderful, easy to grow palm. This is Brahea nitida, the Santa Rosa Canyon palm. It's a fast grower, medium hardy for cold. It's from the Santa Rosa Canyon, which is about 60 miles south of Nogales, Arizona. The canyon is very isolated, so it's pretty much protected from fire where these palms grow. There's enormous boulders, very difficult to enter the canyon, but I collected a few seedlings many years ago. The Brahea nitida is what's called unarmed. The fans on the branches do not have any thorns or spikes. Very beautiful, easy to grow, fast grower. Here we have another Brahea, Brahea brandigii. Brandigii is absolutely the fastest growing of all the Braheas. Slender trunk, but can get 80 feet tall. If you're impatient, grow Brahea brandigii. Here we have Brahea brandigii crossed with Brahea edulis. Much faster than edulis. It has the DNA of brandigii, so it grows faster than edulis, but it's a little more stout, and the fruit is very interesting. When it ripens, it almost tastes like chocolate. This is Brahea armata, variety Clara. Now, Clara grows much faster than the Brahea armata. I don't know if it's a distinct species because it does seem different. I've noticed when I propagated this that Clara doesn't take the cold like armata does, but it is so much faster than armata. It's once again the palm for the impatient person. You may notice, it's kind of hard to tell, but way up there, the fronds aren't quite as blue as armata. They have a little more green in them. but it's an interesting variety. Brahea armata variety clara. This group of palms are from Australia. The genus is Livistona. In Australia, they call them the cabbage palms. This particular species is Livistona drudi. It's distinctive because its fans are halfway split. What do I mean by split? The leaflets are not complete, whereas in other species of Livistona, the leaflets can be complete or they can be finely divided, as in Livistona decipiens, the ribbon palm. We'll get to that in a minute. I planted this seed in 1978, so this particular tree is about 45 years old. This is Livistona decipiens, the ribbon palm. Fast growing, from Australia. Why do they call it the ribbon palm? Because the fans are very finely divided with the leaflets, and they hang down in this weeping look. In the wind, they're very beautiful to watch as they shimmer with all the ribbons. Livistona decipiens is probably the hardiest Livistona of the species, and once again, easiest to grow. This palm is Livistona nitida. It's from the Carnarvon Gorge in Australia. It's another one of the family of Livistonas, the cabbage palms. Easy to grow, but rare and unusual. This is Livistona hugendorpii. It has a more slender trunk than Livistona decipiens, and perhaps the fans are more finely divided than the ribbon palm. The fans are almost completely shredded, but it's an interesting look and a very rare palm. This is Livistona variety Blackdownsii from the Blackdowns tableland. Perhaps it hasn't been named as a distinctive species yet, but it's an interesting Livistona. Livistona Blackdownsii. Here we have Livistona chinensis, the Chinese fountain palm. Slow growing, beautiful palm. The leaflets, as they mature, will tip down and have that rainy sort of look. Chinensis is very hardy, perhaps hardy into the low 20 degrees. It's slow growing. I would call it a semi-dwarf. Livistona chinensis. Queen palm, Sygrus romanzoffianum. Easy to grow, very common, pretty darn hardy into the low 20s before they're damaged. Most people like them because they have the smooth trunk. They look very tropical. They're a pinnate palm, which means they have a feather-type leaf. Very fast growing. Here in Northern California, we get 2 to 3 foot of trunk a year. Now, what's interesting about the queen palm and the family coccozoid is there's a number of palms in that family, including the coconut palm. The seeds on coccozoid palms always have the 3 little eyes where they sprout out. You'll see it on a large coconut. Here we're looking at 2 palms, Butea ornata. This particular one has perhaps been hybridized. It's a little greener, it has grown faster, and this Butea has grown a little slower and is more blue on the leaf. The interesting thing about Butea, the fruit is edible. I've made jelly out of it, and that's why it's called the jelly palm or pindo palm from Brazil. Super hardy, hardier than the queen, probably takes temperatures down into the low 20s before it's damaged. Easy to grow, doesn't get that tall. It's better for a smaller yard. Butea ornata, the pindo palm. Now, if you notice on this trunk, it's been blackened. There was a wildfire that went through here about 4 years ago. Almost all the palms have recovered. All the cycads have recovered. This palm is a hybrid. It's a cross between a queen palm and a pindo palm. They call it a mule. Why a mule? Its seeds are sterile. They don't have any seeds. You will get flowers, but it's pretty clean, super hardy. These will grow in Palm Desert and anywhere in California, except the mountains. But super hardy, medium growing, but really tough. Here we have a fishtail palm. They call it fishtail because of the shape of the leaflet. Caryota variety gigas. They call it the black trunk caryota because the trunk gets very black. These grow very fast and they have massive leaves. They're just beautiful. One leaf can get 12 feet wide by 16 feet long. This is Caryota ochlandra. It's from China. It's not as vigorous as the Caryota gigas. It has a smaller trunk, but is much hardier. Caryota gigas will burn at 29 degrees. Caryota ochlandra won't burn until 26 or 27 degrees. Very hardy, smaller trunk, but quite unusual. It's very rare in California. And this is another Caryota, Caryota urens. It's probably another very hardy one, similar to ochlandra. Will take temperatures down to 28, 27 degrees Fahrenheit before it's burned. They grow relatively fast. This one can get 40 feet. Caryota urens. This is the lady palm, Rapis excelsa. It's often used as an indoor plant. It's a clumping palm. It only gets about 8 feet tall. Super hardy for cold. Does prefer a little shade, especially from the hot afternoon sun. Probably hardy to the low 20 degrees before it's damaged. And even then, it would regenerate from the roots. Rapis excelsa, lady palm. Here we are in what I call the goddess garden. There's a long alley of roses and Mexican blue fan palms. This garden is probably dominated by quite a number of different palms. We'll get into that in a minute, but I really have to talk about my favorite. Right here, Jubea chilensis, the Chilean wine palm. Massive trunks, nice, smooth, gray. They used to call this the Arnold Schwarzenegger of palms. Gets massive, slow growing to start, but eventually they can get 40 feet tall. They're in the coccozoid family, so the nut actually has the 3 eyes, and inside is a coconut meat. It's actually a delicacy in South America. So, Jubea chilensis, Chilean wine palm. This is a very interesting palm, Phoenix theophrastii. These seeds came from the island of Crete. They're probably the hardiest of all the phoenix palms. Takes down to temperatures in the high teens. They are rather wicked. The tips of the leaflets will make you bleed. So it's not one for the average garden, but I've heard that some people in Texas have grown this and it survived some incredible freezes. This is Phoenix laurerii. It's from Australia. The seed batch is often mixed. You don't know what you're gonna get. Sometimes they come out with stiff fronds, sometimes flaccid fronds. Other times they'll have blue color, sometimes they'll have green color, and sometimes they'll be multi-trunk or single trunk. Phoenix laurerii. It's more slender and much smaller than most of your phoenixes. Here we have Paragibea torrellii. This is the mountain coconut from Bolivia. Super hardy, will take temperatures down into the mid or low 20s. The beauty of these, they look like coconuts, and normally we can't grow Cocos nucifera, which is the true coconut palm, here in Northern California. This particular variety is called Sunca. Here we have another mountain coconut. This is Paragibea torrellii, variety torrellii. It seems to be much more massive than the Sunca variety, but once again, it's a beautiful coconut-looking palm. Butea bonnetii. It's a semi-dwarf, very slow growing, very compact, very unusual. Butea bonnetii. Here we have Butea yatei, the yatei pindo palm. I like it amongst the buteas. It has a nice silver blue color. It has a more graceful leaf, and the trunk is much smaller than the Butea ornata. Butea yatei. Here we have Butea variety strictior. The leaves are very stiff, they're not arching. It's probably just a variant of Butea ornata. Very unusual, very rare. Butea strictior. Butea variety paraguayensis from Paraguay. Looks very similar to Butea ornata. Very hard to tell the difference, but I got the seed from Paraguay, 1984. So this guy's probably about 40 years old from seed. Butea variety paraguayensis. This is a Mediterranean fan palm, Chamaerops humilis. Really hardy, down into the teens Fahrenheit. It's always a multi-trunk. What's unusual about this specimen is it's variegated. The leaf has yellow striping in it, and half of the plant is variegated and the other half is green. Very unusual. 1 in a million. This is Brahea aculeata from Sonora, Mexico. It's what I call a semi-dwarf. Extremely hardy into the low 20 degrees. Slow grower. Beautiful little palm for the smaller yard. Brahea aculeata, Sonoran fan palm. This is Brahea morai. It grows on the side of cliffs near Monterrey, Mexico. The beauty of this is the nice full leaves with a silver blue color on the backing. It's a beautiful palm, very slow, very hard to find, extremely rare. Brahea morai. This is Brahea dulcis. They call it the rock palm from Mexico. This is really interesting in the family of Brahea. Now I love the blue color leaves, but what's very unusual, this Brahea makes pups. You might not be able to see them, they're just sprouting now, but it's a multi-trunk Brahea. Very unusual. Rock palm, Brahea dulcis. Brahea decumbens. It's probably the slowest palm on earth. Brahea decumbens. Decumbent meaning it crawls along the ground rather than gets an upright trunk. But it's pretty. Once again, it has the blue leaf. Blue usually indicates hardiness on plants. Brahea decumbens. Here we have a very unusual semi-dwarf palm. This is a phoenix. It's a hybrid. It's a cross between Pusilla and Paludosa, Phoenix hybrid. Very dwarf, very rare. This is a very unusual hybrid. At one time they called it the Parrot Jungle Cross. It's a cross between the most massive of all, the Canary Island date palm, Phoenix canariensis, and the smallest of all, Phoenix robellini, the pygmy date palm. Very unusual, but once again, for a smaller garden, this is ideal. Doesn't get very big. This little multi-trunk fan palm is called the Everglades palm, Acelerafi wrightii. It actually will grow in water, loves water. Will make a clump. I have seen them in Hawaii with 12, 14 feet of trunk. In California, they just don't do quite as well because I just can't give them enough water. Acelerafi wrightii. They also call this the Perotis palm. This is another extremely slow fan palm from Florida. They call this the saw palmetto, Serenoa repens. It will be multi-trunk, but you will see this in the Everglades in Florida. In California, it's very slow. Probably doesn't get that tropical heat that they get in Florida. Serenoa repens. Here we have another Livistona victoriensis from the Victoria River in Australia. It's done well, grows rather fast. It does have a bluish color leaf, which is unusual for the Livistonas. Livistona variety victoriensis. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed our talk about palms. There'll be much more in the future. I'd like to discuss flowering trees, perennials, ground covers, cycads, and much more. I hope you stick around because there's so much more to talk about. I'm Dale Motiska. I'm your host, and this is my garden.